dominating the six. No one's doing it yet. We've had Julie Ertz in that role for years, the defensive midfield role, and she owned it. No one was shaking her from that position. However, slew of injuries, now a pregnancy with her. Andi Sullivan has been in that position. Jealin Howell's been called in. We've also seen Lindsey Haran play that role. And Lori, you talked a bit about Jealin Howell playing with Racing Louisville so far, being alongside Freya Olafsson and just getting lost, canceling each other out between Olafsson and Howell, not being an impact player. And perhaps it's a little too much pressure on Jealin Howell. She was called into the national team. She's gotten senior caps. She's been a mainstay at the youth level, drafted number 2 overall in the 2022 draft. And now it's the pressure maybe being put on her shoulders. It's building up. She's not being a huge impact at Racing Louisville. And when she gets time with the national team, it's not ownership that's taking it. But what about Andi Sullivan? What about Lindsay Haran? We've seen Haran play that role when they needed her to do. But personally, I prefer Haran much higher up the pitch. She does much better there when she's in more of an 8 or 10 role, preferably an 8 role. I like her there. But when you look at this 6, what are you looking at between Sullivan, because Ertz is out of the picture now, Andi Sullivan, Jealin Howell? I'm going to throw Lindsey Haran in there. If you're Vlatko Andonovski and those are your 3 that you're looking at, who are you picking to get that starting role on the World Cup qualifying roster?
Oh, well, I think Andi Sullivan right now. I mean, Andi played the first 45 of the first Uzbekistan game, and then I think was it the full 90 the second, or close to, right? So yeah, I think it's just going to be right now, because I don't have the answer for this. I mean, we can't forget about Sam Mewis. I do feel like Sam Mewis is maybe closer to coming back consistently and getting even more minutes than any of us have thought, right? Especially because it just seemed a little bit weird because she played a couple games and then was called in with the national team, but then they just like decided not to bring her in. But it does sound like she is making some headway there. So that is, in my opinion, not a true number 6 either. However, yeah, somebody that could play there, right? But injured, so let's move on because that's not as hypothetical right now.
Yeah. I love those conversations.
But right now,
the make-believe conversation.
Yeah. Right now, I would put Andi Sullivan. I really believe that Andi can do this and play in that. She can do it. No, that she has the qualities to play this position. It's not going to look like Julie Ertz, and that's fine, right? And I think this team is evolving. Has looked very different than it has in the past, and even in the more recent years too. So again, it keeps going back to what I've saying, which is it really depends on who you're playing with and understanding those roles, because somebody's positioning and role might look very different, or will look really different if you're playing with an Ertz compared to a Sullivan. That's fine. It's just a matter of that being relayed to the players and having a really clear understanding of what's to come, right? So
that's so true. So if you have Sam Mewis in there as the 6, how does that look? Does it look similar to how we saw Lindsey Horan playing that 6, because Mewis is not a true 6? Does it look more like the destroyer of Julie Ertz? Could we see that coming out of Sam Mewis?
Yeah, no, I don't think so either. I think it's a little bit more similar to like how an Andi would play, right? Okay. Getting on the half turn a little bit more off. Like that was how Lindsey Haran played.
Yes.
As well. When Lindsey Haran played though, especially against Sweden in the Olympics, we just got exposed because we got shut big time. And then you're asking like one player to do a lot of work. And it was kind of quite evident in my opinion too, that like Sweden, like sitting Asalani on Haran, then it was difficult for us to figure out how to move the ball and that's just going to be the issue, right? We are easily scouted because we play the most games. It's accessible to get video. Anyway, I would still put Andi in there, and I would probably have a variety of players. So I'm putting Andi in there as like a mainstay. I know I threw Mewis in there, but as I was saying that, and then you brought it back up again, I think I might have to retract that because I don't think we'd like because Mewis is just, in my opinion, too good as the 8, much like a Lindsey Haran.
Yes.
And so it feels like those two would, depending on health and stuff, would have to find their way in terms of competition.
Exactly. I mean, they're talented enough. They could play anywhere on the pitch, but
Yeah.
that's my job here, to make you double think what you're saying and take it back and give us better analysis,
Take
Lori.
it back. Take
Yeah,
it back.
that's what I'm doing here. I like this though. So is Andi Sullivan though? Does she have that on lock? Does she have that role and that position on lock?
No, I don't think so. And I don't think that she does not either, right? Like I don't think it's like, yes, 100% in.
Mhm.
And I also don't think it's like, you're not either.
Yeah.
So it's in between. Again, it goes back to like the performances, and I think she still has to be really imposing with the Washington Spirit, and she was last year and led her team in a way that I think really caught Vlatko's eyes, and I think that he likes her a lot. But I still think there's something where kind of goes back to what we've been saying, right? Like regardless of the games, there's Sullivan can do more.
Yes, I agree. I think I wish there was someone that could challenge Sullivan's position right now, because
Mhm.
it right now, due to health and things like that, there no one's necessarily pushing for Andi Sullivan's role in that 6. I think we tried to have Jealin Howell push for that role, but it's not enough of a challenge for Andi Sullivan. I know we don't like to talk about hypotheticals here, but if Julie
I
Ertz
seem
was
to.
if Julie Ertz was healthy and the competition between Andi Sullivan and Julie Ertz was happening in these training camps being called in, I believe that that would elevate Andi Sullivan's role, not necessarily to change the style of playing to be more similar to Julie Ertz, but rather it would challenge her to be more of an impact and try to steal that role from Julie Ertz. Whereas right now, it's almost like Vlatko is looking for depth in the midfield and trying to find people, and Andi Sullivan is the choice to go to because she's there, and she's very talented and she's very good. But if she had someone also fighting for that role, I think her game could be elevated just a little bit more. And even playing against competition like Uzbekistan, it's not challenging Sullivan enough to be able to say, I need to look at game tape and I need to get better, because she's a player that is tremendously gifted and a
Mhm.
very good player. And when she plays with Washington Spirit, she does look to get better, and she can combine with that front line so extremely well. But is there anyone else that Vlatko could be looking at in this 6 role that was maybe called into camps before or is on an injury list but could be coming back? I know you mentioned Sam Ewis. We wrote her in pencil. We already erased her. She's off that number 6 role. But anyone else for you, Lori, that you think maybe Vlatko is keeping a little bit of a closer eye on, and that we should too?
I'll be curious because I when leading up to this show and like thinking about this and like looking at all the rosters, I can't really name one,
Yeah.
right? And the one that does come to mind though, which I'm not sure a lot of people even listening to this will be like, what? And it'll feel like,
That's why Gary's the
this is
expert,
one for,
Lori.
yeah. So again, you've heard it here first that this happens, right? But it's Gaby Vincent, and she is still on the injured list for Washington Spirit. She played for Kansas City last year, didn't get a lot of time. I think she has some stuff with injuries and keeping herself and staying fit in that regard. But I really liked her last year in the games that she played in for Kansas City. And one of the only players that I see a lot of the time in the 6 role that can be imposing with their athleticism and their body, but also still with the ability to be able to like move the ball and like rotate it around, right, left to right, right to left, and in a way that I view the 6 to be played. And I think that would be the most influential for our women's national team. And I think she has all those attributes. The thing is that like, we just haven't seen her enough, right? So do I think she's on Vlatko's list? Maybe way down. She might be at the same level that I am right now. Like, I'm just joking. I do think that she could be, if she can get in there and get some valuable minutes, it will be really interesting because I think that would push even Andi up a little bit higher, right? Or when Andi's gone from that position, she could fill in. But in order for her to be taking a really clear, like good look, Vlatko at her, then she's going to have to be playing consistently, and she's going to have to be healthy. So it is far off right now.
Wild card, left field wild card. I like it.
It's far off right now, but get ready. I think it could at least get ready for her to, I think, start performing more consistently at the NWSL level, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
There's not a lot of time though, right? Less than 2 months or just about 2 months before
this
that.
This is my wild card pick for down the road.
Oh, so we're not talking 2023 Olympics this summer, World Cup qualifiers.
Yeah. No, there's no way. There's no way she's making this the qualifiers, but I'm just saying the 6 in general, because this conversation is going to go on for a bit.
Yes, I agree with that. But enough of these hypotheticals. I want to stick with the now.
This is not a hypothetical. There's no one now.
Back role. There's no one else. It's only Andi Sullivan or Jealin Howell. What about a player like Morgan Gautral? Yes, dealing with a bit of an injury. She was on the injury list for Chicago Red Stars. Could she play in that 6 role? She's been there before.
No.
She played in the midfield, but not the 6.
I don't think the 6 at this level. Okay. I think Morgan is fantastic, and she's so smooth on the ball, and really like just an intelligent player. 6 at the U.S. Women's National Team level with the amount of injuries she's had. No, I don't think so.
What about Emily Davidson here joining in the chat? What about Megan Klingenberg? Could she be back in the mix?
Nope.
All right, I like this. We're just gonna run through the list.
Listen, all these players are amazing, but I think the thing is that like there was let's see.
What about Girma? Bringing Naomi Girma?
Yeah, I saw that in the comments, and I'm not sure it's probably further up. I like that shout, because when I was thinking about that too, I used to be a big fan of thinking last year when we talked about this in the context of what happens if Ertz gets injured, and then that's what happened, right? And it was like an issue.
Yes.
Much like we're still talking about now because she's pregnant.
I mean, Julie Ertz at 70% is still better than most anyone at 100%. So.
Especially the way the U.S. Women's National Team wanted to play, right?
Yes.
However,
so
I'm just laughing at these things. I'm laughing at some of the comments. Sorry, everybody. I was getting distracted. I like the Girma shout because I used to be a big fan of thinking about Tierna Davidson last year as at least a backup in that 6 role, because she did play there some in college for Stanford. However, Vlatko was like very adamant about she's a center back. Yes. I did think about Naomi Girma as well. It could be interesting. I don't know if I see him using her in that position, especially because that's not where she's playing,
right?
With San Diego either. So she has the ability to pass and play make. But listen, center back position compared to the number 6 or midfield role, people are coming at all angles, right? And it is the speed of play is so different than when you're facing the entire field. When you're in possession, it's very different. So it's a tough one since she's not playing.
I love all these wild cards we're getting in the chat, but I have one of my own. I think that North Carolina Courage is a team that you cannot sleep on right now in the NWSL. They're doing a lot of tremendous things. I think Sean Nahas, head coach for the Courage, is shaking things up, trying different things. And a player in Kiki Pickett, 2021 NWSL draft. She was with Kansas City last year. She's played at the national level, U17, U20, U23 in 2019. Most recently, she has 1 assist for the Courage right now. We've seen her along the back line for Kansas City Current. We've seen her in the front line for North Carolina Courage. Now we've seen her most recently in the midfield, more of an attacking role, however. What about her in the 6? A player like Kiki Pickett. I like her in this role. If we're throwing out wild cards in Gaby Vincent and Kiki Pickett, I'm going to throw out Kiki Pickett as my wild card, because she's a player that can play that role. Defensively, she's got that unlocked. She can do that.
Yeah.
Now we've seen her in more of attacking roles with Sean Nahas in the North Carolina Courage. It's going to take a little bit for her to get used to the 6. I mean, if we're throwing her there, but she could do it. I think she has the skill sets to be that linking player, but also a bit of a destroyer in breaking up play. I mean, is this grasping at straws?
Yeah, it is. I just want to push back on you. The only reason why I say no is because I agree 100% with her qualities and what you're saying. Exactly. There's no doubt about it. I wouldn't have any argument with that. I just don't think that will shine in the 6th position, because it is a whole nother ball game. And I'd worry potentially with some of these teams about her size too in that role. But it is like, I don't see it. I don't think that would be suited the best for her. And I'm not sure that there is that, there is something about the 6th position that like you have to have that desire to do that as well.
Oh, it's a
You
real
know,
role.
yeah. And the desire to be like, this is what you love to do, right? Which is keep the ball moving. You making sure that you are like, you're reading the game so well, right?
Winning every aerial
Mhm.
ball,
Yeah.
that's pretty much a 50-50 in the midfield. That's you. That's your
Yeah.
role to do
It,
that.
yeah, and it just depends too. And I think this is why it's such a fun and also tough conversation to have. And there are hypotheticals because it does depend on how you want to play. Like if you look at Kansas City Current, right? Desiree Scott has owned that sixth position since like day one, feels like, and with the Canadian national team from day one. And like, but she serves that role in a very specific way. She reads the game really well, and she's going to be like, I don't give two Fs what's happening, right? I'm going to lay into you if I think you're going to get into some sort of transition moment, and is totally fine doing that, right? And she affects the game in that way. But I don't necessarily that particularly like we might be able to get away with that, having that type of position for someone if you're going to play an Andi, if you're going to play Lindsay Haran consistently in there, which you probably are, right?
Yes.
But like, because if Rose is playing, Rose isn't going to do that. And she's also not somebody that's going to totally check back and like move the ball around. She's checking back to get the ball and then going on these terror runs that no one wants to defend, right?
Exactly.
So